everyone, welcome back to Great Sports Debates. We're back and better than ever. We got our Week 13 power rankings coming to you before Week 12 is even done. And it was a great weekend of football spaced out across 3 or 4 days this weekend. And we got to see everyone play. So with that, let's jump right into it. We're at Tier 5, the basement. It's the Panthers still. They lost. We thought that they'd be safe winning by 10. So if you were able to get that early tease, that might have worked out for you. When I tried to get it, it already moved to 3.5, I think. So we wound up avoiding it, but that was definitely one we mentioned and that we liked. But they still lost at the end of the day. Moving on, at 31, it's the Patriots. They lost the loser bowl against the Giants. They once again pulled Mac out of the game. They need a quarterback, and they really need a lot. The offense is tough. They just don't have playmakers. Quarterback's not good at all. They're just going to be one of the worst teams all year. At 30, it's the Giants. They did win, but they beat the Patriots. And they've got trounced by a lot of teams, so kind of hard to move them up any higher. You could argue I should have them at 29 because they beat that team. It's the Arizona Cardinals, but they got Murray back. I feel like they've been playing a little bit better with Murray despite being 1-2 since he's come back. And considering who they played and how they played, still a bad team, but maybe just not the worst now. At 28, we got Chicago. Slid them down a couple of spots. They've been losing a lot of games, even though I think that they do look better. And I would have liked to see their game against Minnesota this week before the rankings, because I am kind of intrigued. I do think if they run the ball with Fields more often, it opens up their offense, and maybe they won't be one of the 5 worst teams or so if they can continue to do that. Sliding down a couple more spots is the Jets. You're already kind of seeing it. Like, the lights out defense is starting to tire and give in a little bit, and just hard when you're on the field all the time and your offense can't do anything and you're just not winning games. Zach Wilson's turning over the ball. They got other guys putting the ball on the ground. Again, the offense is too bad. They don't have enough explosive plays, and they can't get Zach Wilson to concentrate on just getting the ball out quick to his playmakers. Next up at 26 is the Tennessee Titans. They did beat Carolina. Not impressively or anything like that, but they did win the game, and we got them here at 26. At 25 is Washington. They got destroyed by Dallas. I think most people expected them to get destroyed. I want to say that's one where the line kept growing and growing. Again, this is a team I said earlier on. You see promise from Sam Howell, but he's just not consistent, and they traded away some of their better players on defense, and they weren't even performing that well before they did trade them anyhow on that end. So Washington's a team that could beat some teams, but they're not consistent. They're not that good. Sorry to say this, but at 24 is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They've done a lot more losing than winning lately. I still think that they're a decent team, but they're in the NFC South. So, really, it's kind of crazy to talk about the 24th best team, and you could possibly make the playoffs, You get the right run and you beat the right teams, because nobody's wanting to win that division. And speaking of that terrible division, okay, the New Orleans Saints, I just don't understand at all. This was a team I thought about betting on the division. Look at their competition. There's teams like Atlanta that don't have a quarterback, and teams like Tampa Bay that had to pick up Baker Mayfield and had some okay pieces, but these were basically 500 teams at best. And sure enough, not that I thought David Carr was some great thing, but I figured, hey, him on that team, in that division, and the teams they play, 10-7 probably win the division. Luckily, I didn't place that bet because they're mixed in this hodgepodge with Tampa Bay and Atlanta, and it's any team's division that, despite them having Kamara and all these little gadget plays and silly things that they do, great wide receivers like Olave to get the ball to, and a really good defense, they just haven't looked that good. At 22, we got the Atlanta Falcons, and that's been the theme all year is, I don't trust their quarterback play, but they really do run the ball well, and when he makes plays with his legs, it kind of opens up the offense as well, just like some of the other teams with these athletic quarterbacks. At 21, we got the Raiders hanging still. They did get beat down by Kansas City after taking an early lead and running the ball pretty well on a really tough defense. At 20 is the Green Bay Packers. It looks like maybe Jordan Love has found that switch. He's played much better the last couple of weeks, and that's resulted in them winning games and being more competitive. And it'll be interesting to see how they play going forward, when he has time to throw. At 19, I got the Cincinnati Bengals. It's probably one of the hardest teams to rank. It's kind of tough with Burrow out. They did terribly against Pittsburgh, but again, Pittsburgh has a great defense. So, but yeah, they're under 500 now. They're in a stacked division where they're in last place. So they're kind of in a tough spot, and they've looked really good a couple of times, but more often than not so much. At 18 is a similar team with the Chargers. I know they're under 500. I still think this is a team that can beat most teams on some weeks, when everything's clicking right. I still think they have a pretty good offense, but they haven't been able to play complementary football. They got some good players on defense, but you got guys out and missing spots, and some of the guys just aren't consistent. So it's tough. And I know they made some changes this week. Sunday night football game isn't finished, but I know they made some. They were making some changes to the lineup for that game. So don't have a lot of faith that they're going to beat Baltimore, but I'm not going to say it's impossible. 17, we got Seattle. I know this is going to be one that upsets people because, in theory, they still have a pretty good record, but they've looked bad the last several weeks. And when you point to what they're good at, it's kind of hard. You want them to be a team where they got a couple of runners where they found value in the draft, where they should be able to run and do play action off of that. I feel like they're trying to throw the ball a little too much or not at the right times. And their running game is not bringing those guys up so they can have those big plays. And Geno Smith is coming a little bit back to earth. He's not quite having the season he had the year before. And they got the Rams, who they lost to twice in their division, plus San Francisco. So it's going to be tough sledding for Seattle. And they just got smoked by San Francisco this week as well. At 16 is Minnesota. This is another one I'm sure people are going to be mad about. Maybe not, now that they lost the game to Denver last week. The people that were on the Dobbs bandwagon might have come back to earth. Pretty good team. They got a good offense. I like it when they have Osborne off the field because he can't catch. Dobbs makes the offense more interesting because he's athletic. He can pick up yards with his feet as long as he's not making mistakes or putting the ball on the ground. But it's a team that you don't want to say is unlucky because, if you're like one of the worst teams at turning the ball over, at some point part of that is your identity as well. At 15, we got the Rams. Again, this kind of middle section is tough. This is another one I know a lot of people aren't going to like. I know they're sub 500 or right around 500, but they've had Matt Stafford in and out of the lineup. They were missing Cup for a while. I feel like when they're getting some of their pieces back, this can be a good middle-of-the-road team. When Stafford has time to throw the ball, he does pretty good, especially if he gets out to an early lead where he's not making overly aggressive throws that lead to interceptions. At 14 is the Cleveland Browns. Surprised they lost to Denver last week, but they did, or the other day, and it's just kind of tough when you can't throw the ball. It makes it too tough on the running game, and Denver moved the ball pretty good on their defense, especially running the ball. Cleveland supposedly, I know a lot of people said the best defense, and I don't think they're the best defense, but I definitely thought they were good, and I was surprised how well Denver moved the ball on them, especially running the ball. At 13 is Indy. They played a pretty good schedule. They played tough teams good. They've been able to score points all year, so they're definitely one of these top in-between middle-of-the-road teams that I like. At 12 is the Steelers. No matter what I think about their offense, they just keep winning. They have too good of a record. They're slated for the playoffs right now. They can make some noise in this division. They beat some tough teams. And no matter how many stats are stacked against them of them not getting 400 yards and being outgained by every team they played until the other day, they're still winning the games. And at some point, you have to give them credit for that. At 11 is Buffalo. Man, I watched a lot of the early game, and it looked like they were handling Philadelphia pretty well, only for them to go to overtime and lose that game. So it's just kind of tough with Buffalo. Again, I've said it all year. I feel like this is a team that can hang with anyone, but they're just making too many mistakes, and they're sub 500 or 500 or wherever they are right now. I think maybe 6-6. So 11's pretty high considering what they've actually done. I still think that this is a team that could definitely win a playoff game, but who knows? They might not even make the playoffs at this point. At 10, this is the biggest mover we had in the power rankings. Most people are only, not moving or a spot or two. It's pretty well established at this point of the year, but I can't ignore the fact that Denver's won 5 games in a row, and they've won against a pretty tough slate, beating teams like Cleveland and Kansas City, and I can't remember, the rest off the top of my head, but they've been playing pretty good ball against some good teams. The defense that we thought might be there is starting to show up, and the offense is being adequate, and I think they're being smarter of being able to run the ball and then putting Russell Wilson in situations where he's more doing play action or not having to throw the ball as much. At number 9, we got the Houston Texans. They lost the game where they got jumped on by Jacksonville, and they definitely wound up making a game out of it. CJ Stroud's definitely the real deal. I like this team a lot. They are going to be the bottom team in my tier 2 grouping, and I want to watch them the rest of the year and see how they develop leading up to playoff time. At 8 is Detroit. Last week, a lot of you were killing me that I had Detroit too low. Now some of you might say that they're too high, even though I dropped them down a spot. I think they kind of are where they are. If they have another bad showing, especially on defense, they might have to slide out of the top 10. But they've had a strong start. They haven't had the toughest schedule in the world, so it's hard to say that they're for real. They beat Kansas City week 1, but if you look up and down their schedule, there wasn't a lot of tough teams they've been facing. I'm really looking forward to the Dallas game to kind of see what the Lions are made of, but the defense has been beyond bad the last few weeks, and they're not going to be a serious threat or beat anyone in the playoffs if their defense plays that bad, no matter what they do on offense. At 7 is Jacksonville. I know people are probably again saying that this is another team that's too low. Like, oh, you're only moving them up one spot. But when you get to the very top, it's kind of hard to move up with all these other teams that are also winning every week and have been looking impressive all year long. So I do really like Jacksonville. I just don't know if I like them better than any of these other teams I have in the top 6. So if you tell me that Jacksonville's too low, you got to give me your rankings of who you got in the top 10 so we can make a comparison. You pick apart my list, I'll pick apart your list, we'll figure it out. At 6, we got the Baltimore Ravens. Didn't get to see that Sunday night game yet as I'm putting this out for the members. This will be out to everyone. Probably I'll get it pushed out to the other side at halftime or something like that. And, after it goes through all its checks and stuff for everyone to see sometime Sunday night. But I do expect them to beat the Chargers. I mean, that's one of our picks this week. I said, hey, if Baltimore slides to -3, jump on it. And we did. There's also the money line option for Baltimore. That number just wasn't friendly enough for me. And there was a parlay we discussed that we went with some other teams instead, especially once Baltimore moved to -3. We really liked that against Chargers. All right, moving into the top 5, we got the Miami Dolphins. I know everyone was giving me a hard time because I moved them up quicker than other people did earlier in the year. We made some good money off them early in the year. And then everyone comes running off the bandwagon when they lose some games saying, well, look at the teams they beat and look at the teams they lost to. At the end of the day, they're 8-3. And yeah, they're 8-0 against teams 500 or below, but that means that they're taking care of business. And it'd be interesting to see, I don't think just because they haven't beat a team that we say is a good team yet that they can't, because this team looks really good on offense and they've gotten some of their defensive pieces that were missing back. So right now they're slated for, the 2 seed or tied for the number 1 seed in the AFC. They're somewhere in that mix, so they're doing pretty well for themselves. All right, moving into Tier 1. These teams are all tricky. They've all been super impressive to me. This could probably be interchanged a lot of different ways. But at 4, I got Dallas. I want to say off the top of my head, they got the worst record of this group of 4. And they've definitely shown some holes. They're susceptible to teams that can run the ball. They don't run the ball as strong as some of these other teams do. But it's hard to deny, and I don't care who they play. They've blown out a lot of NFL teams this year. Micah Parsons is sick. The guy Bland that came off the bench is a beast, defensive back. They have some really good pieces, especially when they get up early and they just start being aggressive on defense. This is a really tough team. I know Dallas hasn't proven it in the playoffs in years past, but and it's going to be tough again because they're probably going to be on their road because Philly's probably going to win that division. But I definitely think that they could win a playoff game this year depending on the matchup. At number 3 is the Kansas City Chiefs. We're just kind of keeping them right there. This was the team that we said was the most talented roster in football. So, they could come up from 3. I'm just not really impressed with their wide receiver play. I feel like they get a ton of drops that you don't typically see on a team that's good. But they're pretty strong on the interior of their offensive line. They can run the ball okay. Obviously, they have the best quarterback in the game. And they got Chris Jones anchoring a defense that has some playmakers at each level. And between that offense and that defense, 3 is probably as low as I could go. I was thinking about having them at 2. But at number 2, we got the Philadelphia Eagles. I almost slid them down a couple spots. I slid them down 1. They're 10-1. So I know some people are going to be like, that's ridiculous. Yeah, it was a close game, but it's the Bills. But they've had a lot of close games. And I know they beat Kansas City, but I thought Kansas City really played better in that game for the most part. So based on that, I wanted to put Kansas City ahead of Philly, but I gave Philly the slight edge because they do have the better record, and they have done more to this point. And that leaves at the number one spot the San Francisco 49ers, who just impressed me a lot of times when I watch them. And I think as long as they stick to the basics and they try to be a run-first team that uses play action and uses Brock Purdy more of a game manager than falling in love with some of the big plays they have and trying to throw the ball too much, that they're going to be a tough team to beat for anybody. So, there it is. That's my top 32 teams. Let me know in the comment section who we missed, who's too high, who's too low, how you would do it, where people should go, and thanks for watching.